The topic of this presentation is moisture stress, or more specifically, a lack of moisture needed for turfgrass growth. Water is a finite resource that is highly conserved. The amount of water found today on our planet is the same amount that was present when the Earth was initially formed. 97% of the water is in the Earth's oceans. The remaining 3% is fresh water. Of this, 69% of it is in the form of glaciers or ice caps. 30% is found in groundwater, and only 0.3% is in surface water. Water is a major factor limiting turfgrass growth. In semi-arid, arid, and desert regions, turfgrasses can experience periodic or seasonal long water deficits. The hot, drier climates have a much higher evapotranspirational rate that results in rapid loss of moisture over a prolonged period. In regions where seasonal wet periods exist, periodic periods of water stress can occur. This golf course is in northern Michigan, and the non-irrigated rough is showing drought stress. Water deficits range in severity. The initial moisture stress is termed wilt. Wilt is a visible drooping, rolling, or folding of turfgrass leaves caused by a loss of leaf turgidity. Wilt occurs when transpirational rates exceed the absorption rate of the roots. And initial symptoms appear as bluish color to the turf and footprinting is apparent. Common wilt symptoms appear as a bluish-gray color that occurs in small localized areas as shown here along the outer edge of the fairway, or extending over large areas like this Kentucky bluegrass home lawn. Note the bluish tint that is apparent on the left portion of the lawn. Footprinting is a wilt symptom that occurs when walking across the turf under moisture stress. The presence of a footprint is due to the lack of plant turgidity. The leaves do not immediately recover to their vertical orientation. Factors that increase transpiration or restrict water absorption by the roots enhances the turfgrass wilting tendency. Environmental conditions that favor increased transpiration include higher temperatures, windy conditions, high solar radiation, and low humidity. Shallow or restricted root systems can impair water uptake by plants. Deeper rooting turf grasses are less prone to wilting than shallow rooted turf grasses. Here the root depths of Poa annua and creeping bentgrass are shown side by side. The root system of Poa annua on the left is shallower than that of creeping bentgrass, and thus the plant is much more susceptible to the potential for moisture stress or wilting. This Poa annua green is showing moisture stress symptoms due in a large part to its shallow root system and a series of days of continual high evapotranspirational rates. Soil conditions that restrict root growth enhance the wilting tendency. Soils that are heavy and compacted restrict root growth by making it difficult for roots to penetrate the soil profile. On heavy compacted soils, the soil oxygen levels are lower, impacting negatively root respiration, which leads to less growth and in some cases death. You can see standing water on this soccer field due to compaction. At the time, this field was located in Soweto, South Africa. Wilt is a temporary condition, and in most situations can be alleviated with the application of water to restore plant turgor. Prolonged periods of moisture deficits can cause negative effects on plant growth. This is known as drought. Drought stress is most severe on non-irrigated turfs where the potential for extended periods without rain can occur. This is a Bermuda grass turf, which we will discuss later, usually has excellent drought resistance, but a prolonged period without moisture, the Bermuda grass has gone dormant, appearing brown. This picture is from a golf course on Cyprus, where supplemental irrigation water was restricted to only greens and the surrounds. During drought, plant water potentials are lower, cell expansion is limited, and growth is greatly reduced. Cell walls become inflexible and membranes shrink and pull away from the cell wall. You may note the similarity of this dehydration of the cell and that of a cell undergoing low temperature hardiness. The overall brittleness of the cells contributes to increased susceptibility of the turf to traffic or wear injury during drought periods. Note the cartwheel tracks. This Kentucky bluegrass lawn in Dayton, Ohio is undergoing severe moisture stress from a lack of rainfall. At this point, the homeowner decided to mow the lawn. Notice the wheel tracks from the mower and the footprinting. This photograph was taken after the home lawn had received a period of rainfall, breaking its dormancy, and the turf was beginning to grow and recover, except in those areas where the mower damage had occurred and in some of the footprinting. Stomatal regulation is the first line of defense against plant water deficits. Stomata shown here are tiny pores in the leaf that are surrounded by guard cells that regulate its opening and closing. If we look at the leaf and where water loss occurs, stomata serve as a site for gas exchange and photosynthesis and the point for water loss due to transpiration. Only 2 to 3% of the leaf surface area contains stomata, but 90% of water loss occurs through these openings. Stomata open during the day and close at night. During the day, stomata will close in cases where transpiration is occurring at a greater rate than water absorption, and with cool season turf grasses primarily, high temperatures and light intensities can close stomata. One might think the number or density of stomata would be correlated to evapotranspirational rates, or put another way, the higher the density, the greater the transpiration rate. In various studies, including this one, where stomatal density of warm season turf grasses is compared to transpirational rate, no correlation exists, which was also the case with cool season turf grasses. It does seem that stomatal control varies among turfgrass species and may account for Bermuda grass, for example, having a lower transpirational rate. Abscisic acid is believed to be the primary chemical signal controlling stomata response under drought conditions. Abscisic acid is a plant hormone that plays a role in stomatal closure and in general plant dormancy. Similar to temperature resistance, drought resistance in plants is comprised of 3 components. Evasion is where the plant is not present at the time of the stress. This would be the case for annual weeds. For example, the true annual form of Poa annua produces seed in the spring and dies prior to summer drought stress. From a perennial turf management perspective, having your turf die prior to a stress is not an acceptable means of drought resistance. Avoidance is the primary means a turf survives a stress. Turf grasses may avoid water stress by having a deeper or more extensive root system. The list is comprised of just some examples of avoidance mechanisms in regard to drought stress. Tolerance is the internal mechanisms by which a plant protects itself from a direct stress. Listed here are a few examples. The severity of the drought stress is determined by the duration, number of exposures, and the presence of multiple stresses. In highlighting drought stress, avoidance is the ability of a turfgrass plant to postpone plant water loss by reducing transpiration and or increasing water uptake. Turfgrass plants can reduce transpiration through early stomatal closure or by leaf rolling by reducing the unit area of leaf exposed to transpirational water loss. You may have guessed these plants are not turf grasses, it's corn, which is a grass. Notice the leaves are rolled to reduce the leaf area exposed to water loss. The presence of leaf hairs, which are found on some of the warm season turf grasses, reduce evaporation from the leaf surface. By restricting free air movement across the leaf, the boundary layer becomes thicker, restricting transpiration. This is a leaf of buffalo grass. The hairs are the white appendages. some turf grasses have a thicker leaf cuticle that can help reduce transpiration. Importantly, a deep root system, as mentioned previously, helps plants avoid a water deficit by extracting water from deeper in the soil profile. Tolerance is the ability of the plant to experience the drought stress and survive. In the face of drought, several turf grasses go dormant. Leaves shrivel and die, the crown dehydrates. Basically, the plant sacrifices its leaves only to give rise to new leaves and to new growth with the arrival of rain or irrigation. Internal adjustments, including osmotic adjustments, enhance turfgrass drought resistance during drought periods. A measurable characteristic of a turfgrass's drought tolerance is the potential to recover and grow after a drought. Here is that same golf course shown in the previous picture, once adequate moisture for growth was restored. In this case, the Bermuda grass fully recovered. From this chart, looking at Bermuda grass, you can see it has excellent overall drought resistance because of both avoidance and tolerance mechanisms. You can compare this to the other turf grasses listed. This concludes this presentation.